Hi boys and girls, it's Mrs. Engel. Today I'm going to be reviewing with you how to measure with rulers. And I have two goals for you to accomplish today. The first being that I want you to realize that there are usually two sides to a ruler. On one side of the ruler, you're going to see inches. And on the other side, of the flip side of a ruler, you're going to see centimeters. Or you might even see millimeters, because millimeters, 10 millimeters, actually create 1 centimeter. And I'll show you that in just a minute. So the first goal being that when you're measuring an object, making sure if you're asked to measure in centimeters that you're actually using the centimeter side of the ruler. Or if you're asked to measure in inches, that you're making sure that you're using the inch side of the ruler. My second goal for you today is to understand the importance of lining up the object that you're measuring with the 0 mark on the ruler. This is an important step that a lot of people forget. So let's go ahead to our first goal. I want to show you a couple of different rulers because there are no two rulers that are alike. Let me show you that. Here's a ruler. Here's another ruler, and here's another ruler that we actually used to use on our FCAT test. So you can see if you're given a ruler, it might look differently how you measure it, the object that you're trying to measure. Okay, let's go back to the fact that we're going to learn today that there's two sides to every ruler, or most rulers. Let me show you that. On one side of the ruler, you're going to find centimeters. And you can see that right here. We have centimeters. So then we have 1 centimeter, 2 centimeters, 3 centimeters. And if you remember what I said before, each centimeter is broken up into little teeny tiny millimeters. And there's 10 millimeters in 1 whole centimeter. So if you're asked to measure in inches, and you're measuring your object on this side of the ruler, you're not going to get the correct answer. So it's very important for you to check and make sure that you're measuring on the right side. So if I'm measuring in inches, then I want to make sure that I'm on the side. And you're noticing that the inches are much larger than a centimeter is down here. The inches are different. They're actually broken up not into tens. This particular inch is broken up into 16 parts. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 little tick marks in a half of an inch, which means that there's 16 tick marks in a whole inch. Okay? So again, understanding that if you're asked to measure in inches, you're checking the ruler to make sure you're not measuring in centimeters, that you're actually measuring in inches. Or again, if you're asked to measure in centimeters, checking to make sure that you're on the right side of the ruler. Okay, so the second goal for today is to make sure that you understand that you have to line up your object that you're measuring with the 0 mark. So let's say that I'm asked to measure my glue stick in centimeters. Okay? If you are asked to measure with this particular ruler, I'm going to make sure that I start with that 0 mark on the ruler. If I start here at the end, this actually is not even getting measured because the centimeters start at the 0. Your first centimeter starts at the 0. So what happens here is the reason why the rulers are made this way is because they can actually get damaged over time and start to wear away. So then we wouldn't be able to use the ruler because we're taking away the first centimeter. Let me show you a different ruler, what it might look like. So here's a ruler. This one doesn't have as much of an end on it, but it does have a little bit of an end so that, again, if it gets worn away, we still have that 0 mark. Some of your, and again, this is inch, not centimeters. Okay, if I flip it over to centimeters, because that's what I'm going to start measuring with, I don't see a 0 mark But if I look at my 1 centimeter, my 2 centimeters, I see that those tick marks are a little bit longer than all the others. Even this half tick mark is a little bit shorter than my full centimeters. So if I were to look for the 0, it would be obvious that it was here. So again, when I start measuring my glue stick, I'm not going to measure from the very end. I'm going to make sure that I move into the 0. Okay. Let me show you one more ruler. Okay, here's inches. I can't see my 0, but I can tell that it would be right here. Okay, so I'm going to measure starting my glue stick here if I were measuring in inches. Okay, or if I'm measuring in centimeters, over here on this side again, no 0, but I can tell there's 10 tick marks here. This is where the 0 mark would be, so that's where I'm going to start the end of my object. Okay, we got that so far. That's a very, very important rule to remember. Okay. Now, I was asked to measure my glue stick in centimeters. So again, I'm going to making sure that I'm on centimeters first, not inches, because I'm asked to measure in centimeters. Lining up my glue stick with that 0 mark. Okay, not moving it. Now, if I look here, I'm seeing I'm about 8 centimeters long. If I'm asked to measure, to the nearest inch, or not inch in this case, we're going, centimeters. If I'm asked to measure to the nearest centimeter, let's move this back a little bit. Come on, my glue stick's getting glued down. If I'm asked to measure, making sure I'm on the 0, to measure to the nearest centimeter, then I'm going to go with 8 because my end of my glue stick is closest to my 8. See how much farther it is away from the 9, so it wouldn't be 9 centimeters, it would be 8. But if I'm asked to find the exact measurement in centimeters, so let's do that down here. Oops. Exact measurement in centimeters. Here's how that's going to work. So I know I have 8 centimeters, but then it goes over a little bit. So what I like to do in this case is take another flat edge. In this case, I'm going to use another ruler, and I'm going to line it up with the end, and this is a little hard for you to see, so let me zoom in a little bit. Let me move us over, moving the wrong way, back at the 0. And this sometimes, notice how I have to make sure and check that 0 mark at all times because sometimes I can move a little bit. Okay, so if I line up my other flat edge, because sometimes it's a little hard to see. It's actually pretty easy to see on the iPad, but when you're actually measuring, if you line it up, I can see that it goes 2 little tick marks in to this guy. So we have 8, 9, not 9, sorry, not 9. It's going to be 8 holes and then 2 more little parts. And remember, how many millimeters are in a centimeter? That's right, there's 10. So there's a couple of ways you can write this. You can have 8 whole centimeters. So we can write 8 centimeters, and then we had 2 millimeters. So that's that means 2 meters. 2 millimeters. We could write it 8 whole centimeters, and we have 2 parts out of 10 holes in a centimeter. So that's another way that I can write it. Or I can write it 8 whole centimeters and 2 tenths. So I can write it 8.2 of a centimeter. So either any of these would be correct because, again, we went 2 little tick marks past the 8 whole centimeters. Okay? All right. Let's try one more object. So let's say, we'll stick with centimeters. Let's say that I'm going to measure my pencil here, my lead pencil. So who can tell me what's the first thing that I'm going to think about? If I'm asked to measure, we'll measure in 2 ways. We're going to measure to the nearest centimeter. And we're also going to measure exact in centimeters. So if I'm going to measure, what's the first thing that I need to think about? If you said making sure that you're on the centimeter side, you are correct. Okay, if I were measuring on this side and we were looking for centimeters, I would get this wrong, undoubtedly. Okay, so back to the centimeter side. What's the second thing that we think about? If I'm measuring my lead pencil here, what do we need to think about? Would it be lining it up to the very, very edge of the ruler? No, it would not. We're going to line it up with the 0 mark. Oh, I'm not on the 0 just yet. There we go. All right, so now this is a little hard to see because it's white on white, but let's look closely. And again, if I use my straight edge over here, and I know you guys can't see, but I'm still on 0. That's where I'm lining up. So how many, if I was measuring to the nearest centimeter, what would I say this pencil is? If you said 15 centimeters, you are correct. I'm going to go ahead and write that down. So 15 centimeters is the nearest centimeter. What if I'm going exact? Let's see. Exact. There's the very edge of my pencil, right? Let me get it in there. Hold on one second. Right there. So we would say 15 whole centimeters, and then how many tick marks? We're right here. So we're 1 tick mark past the 15. So we're going to do 15 centimeters. And then how many millimeters? 1 millimeter. How else can we write that? Think about how many millimeters are in 1 centimeter. We can do 15. How many parts past that 15 was it? It was 1 little tick mark past. How many tick marks in a whole centimeter? 10. Or we can write it as 15 and 1/10 of a centimeter, or 15.1. All right, I hope this helped you guys realize my 2 goals for today. 2 very important goals. Now let's see you go practice.